Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this morning. Just wanted to let people start filtering in, and we'll go ahead and start in just a few minutes. All right, for those just joining, welcome. We'll just give everybody another minute to enter. People are still coming in, and we'll be started in just a minute. Okay, it looks like most people have entered. We'll go ahead and get started. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Spring Gardening webinar series sponsored by the Central Oregon Master Gardeners, Oregon State University, and our sponsors. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful April day. My name is Lisa Nakadati and I will be your host. The other Master Gardeners assisting behind the scenes are Jerry Schultz and Deborah Wenzel. Our presenter is Karen McCarthy, who will talk about how to transform your landscape to be a part of, rather than fight, our Central Oregon climate, where we battle cold, wind, heat, and low precipitation. Plant Select is a nonprofit based in Colorado, a cooperative effort between Colorado State University and the world-renowned Denver Botanical Gardens. For over 25 years, they have been identifying, doing trials, and introducing plants for the landscape that not only look great, but will also thrive in our harsh Western intermountain landscapes. We'll review a few old favorites plus some new introductions from Plant Select. But first, some housekeeping. All videos and microphones are off, except for the presenters. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A window. We will reserve time at the end to answer anything that might not be covered in the presentation. The presentation is being recorded and will be available for online for a short period of time following the session. In a few days, you'll be sent an email with a link to access the recording. We will also send you any links that Karen mentions in her presentation. Sorry about that. And without further ado, let me introduce Karen.
Hi there, everybody. So glad to be here. I've never done a webinar. I've just participated in Zoom calls, so I'm not kind of used to the, I don't know, the little anxiety of dealing, possibly being in front of many people instead of just quite a few. But I'm really glad that I've got invited to talk about this subject because it's something I'm really passionate about. I own a small nursery. I have done so for 11 years, Madras Garden Depot. And in my former life, I was a landscape designer estimator. Before that, I actually worked in landscaping. I have a fine art degree. I have no horticultural degree or botany or anything. Just for the last 30 years, I've just been doing plants. And I ended up in Central Oregon in 2007. And I love it here. And I moved from Northern Nevada. So it's really not so much of a change. I kind of brought some things with me, some tools with me, and I've just really enjoyed being here and working in this area with really great people. And without further ado, I just want to mention that the notes, if you've received the notes, this version is actually it's not the correct version. It's needed a little more editing and I added a few more plants to it. So at the end of the webinar, if you want that, I think we can arrange to have that sent out to everybody in an email, the correct version, which resides at work and I'm at home, so I can't grab it. Let's see. I think I'm ready to go, and there is a question and answer period at the end. So just do take notes. If you don't have a piece of paper or something, go grab it. And then if you do have these notes that I did send you, do you know that there's some plants that are not towards the end of the talk? So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Here we go. So as Lisa mentioned, Plant Select has been around for quite a long time, since 1997 actually. And it's a nonprofit, and they really do a great job, I think, in getting plants out where people need them, where we have tougher conditions, more xeric, high and dry, cold and hot summer, like summers and winters. And they do work really well in Central Oregon, I've found. So we really, really like them. That's why we titled it Plants That Want to Grow Here. At any rate, we have been a retail partner for the past 6 years. That means that we have access to not just acquiring plants, but also all the information. They do webinars only for growers and for retailers. And in Oregon, we're actually the only active, there's only 2 retailers in Oregon, and we're the only active one. The other retailer is over in Hillsboro. It is Blooming Plants. I've talked to one of their people over there, and I think they're going to start growing some more. So there'll be more opportunity to get more of these plants out there and for people's gardens. So it's a collaboration between Denver Botanical Gardens. It's 2 gardens actually comprise the gardens. One is in Denver, kind of an older, really beautiful older residential area of Denver. It was established in the 20s, I believe. And then the other part of the Botanical Gardens is down in Chatfield Farm, which is 160 acres. They have a lot of really cool programs down there where they have room. They have like a 2-acre lavender trial garden. They have a veterans garden that's 2 or 3 acres where they grow food that they provide to different nonprofits throughout Denver. They really grow a lot of food. I mean, it's a really significant thing. And then they just have these beautiful different landscapes, rock gardens. They even have a riparian area because they have a creek going through. So anyway, great thing. And then Colorado State University is the other partner, the horticultural department at CSU, which is primarily in Fort Collins. And so if you're ever planning a trip to go there, there's so many great places. You could probably spend a week going amongst all the places where there's just lots of great horticultural activity. If anyone's heard of crevice gardening, that's a really big deal in Colorado and Utah right now. And there's a couple of great examples that you can see that have been installed for probably 4 years, maybe 5 years now. So really cool. So like we mentioned at the very beginning, we actually live at the very edge of the Intermountain West. We're not part of the Willamette Valley. We're actually right on the edge of the West, and it extends up, to the Canadian border, goes all the way down to like northern New Mexico, northern Texas, in Arizona. And these plants that there's probably over 350 plants now that are kind of the part of the program of Plant Select. So these plants, not every single one will do well because there's some that are a little bit, they require just a little bit different things in terms of actually altitude. Some of them can only grow at a certain altitude and above. So not very many, but in general, they're good for all these places. And I'd say 98% of them or 95% are probably full sun plants. There's some that do great in dry shade, and they're pretty specific about dry shade because we do have that in our landscapes. We have buildings casting shade, trees casting shade, and not a lot of irrigation. So that's why these plants are great. This kind of goes through all of the parameters that they use in getting plants listed for introduction. They actually have a meeting once a year, and I've participated in one, and it's amazing the information that people share and bring to these meetings. I mean, it's really a very considered thing, because they have people that are like teach at the university level, people that are landscapers, people that are owners of very well-known wholesale nurseries and growers. They participate in this. There's probably anywhere from 8 to 12 people. And they really go over a whole lot of things in order to get a plant introduced into the program. So it's not just some willy-nilly thing where the marketing department is involved and, you know, they're looking for a really pretty purple-leaved hydrangea, something like that. This is not that at all. So it's not in competition with any of the more mainstream kind of plants you see at garden centers and at big box stores. So they do have a great website. It's plantselect.org. And the website is divided up into different parts. My favorite part that I like to tell customers about is the pages that they have devoted to, you know, designing, using these plants in your landscape, how best to place them, which plants like to grow best together. And they have a lot of scenarios. They have some designs that you can download that have been put together by some really good designers. In the past, I know that Lauren Springer's participated. Different people that are part of the Plant Select program, actually in Denver, have done some designs. And anyway, it's all available there for people to kind of peruse and to adapt into their own landscape. And then where to find these plants? Well, if you're a homeowner, gardener, you go to the retailer section and there's a list of all the retailers. And if you go into the state area and click on that, you'll find that we're one of the 2 that are there. And every year we submit to the Plant Select program an Excel spreadsheet that lists all the plants that we are growing or we have in inventory that we can provide people if they have an inquiry and want to come up and shop and acquire plants. We do work with some landscapers too, getting, you know, large orders together for them. And we also do that for homeowners that are actually doing a landscape design with a designer. We'll make sure that we can provide as many of the plants that they're asking for. So if any of you are ever in that situation, you can always email us or call us and we can work with you. We do have a lot of really good information. Being a retail partner, every year Plant Select sends us these brochures, which we never throw out, even though these are from 2021 and whatever. We always keep them on hand because every year they have a listing of all the new introductions. Try to open this up. Hope you can see it. So they do all the introductions that they're doing for that season, that year. And some years there's 8 or 10 plants. Some year there's only 4 or 5 plants. Just depends on how it rolls with the selections and how they turn out. They just don't pump it out. They don't have to meet like a certain criteria of like, we have to have 10 plants to fill a brochure. It's not like that. Anyway, we always hand those out. We bring them to presentations that we do, or if we're doing an event, like we're going to be coming up on June 1st, we're going to be at the garden fair in the parking lot at the OSU Extension in Redmond. And we'll have some to hand out to people. We'll also be bringing plants with us that are part of this program. And one way you can identify plants that are part of the program, I hope I can show you this little show and tell. They're going to have this symbol here, the sun. That's their logo for Plant Select. So if you see that, you'll know that you are getting a plant that's part of that program. So onwards, this is an actual picture of an actual friend and client who lives in Madras, and her garden, I believe, was in the 2019 Jefferson County plant tour. And it's up in a facing west. It's high and dry, and except you can see the little bit of lawn that's way in the background here. We call it the hill strip. It's not a hill strip, it's lawn. in this development, at the time that we installed this garden, they weren't allowing anything but lawn in their section between the sidewalk and the curb of the streets, which was kind of funny because the development was a LEED community, you know, meaning environmentally conscious of different things as far as drainage and building sites and leaving trees and all that. And they still wanted to include turf in the strips, which has now been abandoned. And people have, you know, got a little bit more sense. They've gone to, you know, using a more xeric approach to that. So anyway, it's kind of ironic. I have to point it out. Sorry about that. So moving on, our first, we're starting at the top with the trees, I guess. And we're starting with Acer tartaricum. This is a hot wings maple. It's a cultivar that's was actually found growing in one of the wholesale nurseries in Colorado. And so they propagated it and it was a stable plant. And so after a few years, they introduced it into the program. And some of you may be familiar with this. They have these beautiful samaras. They're like in clusters and they truly look like flowers and they start emerging late June through July. They kind of persist on the tree. They get this beautiful fall coloring. And being a Tartarian maple, you can see it has kind of an arrowhead shaped leaf. It's not a huge tree. It's probably, I think the largest one I've ever seen is probably just under 25 feet. I saw one at the Denver Botanical Garden. They have a row of them, not really an alley, but just a row of about 4 or 5. And they're just gorgeous. You can get these in a multi-trunk, which I recommend personally. I really think multi-stem or multi-trunk varieties, you know, like if you can get this tree that way, it gives you a lot more possibility. I've always liked multi-stem trunks of small trees like red buds. It also gives you kind of an insurance plan. So if you have something break or something die off or the wind comes through and you know, it's not going to rip out the whole tree. It's going to just damage part of it. You can, you know, go in and prune it out and restore it. Whereas if the tree snaps off, you know, halfway in a windstorm, it's sort of like curtains, but you can still turn it into, if you're brave enough, you can cut it down and let it shoot up from the base, and then you'll end up with a multi-stem after all. So kind of the long workaround. Believe me, I've seen it happen. So that's why I kind of recommend multi-stem trees. This is a very cool tree. It's not very well known yet in the trade. I do believe Proven Winners got a hold of it, and they've got a named version. It's called Temple of Bloom, not Doom. This tree actually is from a province in China, up in the mountains, in Hubei province, which is famous because of the city of Wuhan. We won't go any further into detail about that. But this tree is probably, I'd say it's about 18 to 20 feet tall. The Heptacodium myconoides, they call it Seven Suns flower because right now you can see it's in white flower stage. It does have this really cool peeling bark. They call it exfoliating bark, peeling bark. I find it's very attractive. It's kind of like a paper bark maple or like the other tree that we don't really grow them here, Lagostomeria, the crepe myrtles, if you're familiar with those. It kind of has that kind of a look, and it's really distinctive, I think. So there's a close-up of the flowers. They are fragrant. I personally haven't smelled it myself. Maybe I haven't been around when it's at the right time or the right temperature to smell the fragrance, but I've heard they're very fragrant. And they are really beloved by pollinators. All sorts of flies and bees and everything get in there. And there's a funny image I didn't share, but I should have. It was from, I think it was from like Harvard University, or maybe it was from UMass and Amherst. One of the students made a poster about this tree being so, you know, it's like the prime candidate in its bloom period for having the most pollinators hanging out in it. So really neat little tree. super tough little leaves. The leaves are about 3.5 to 4 inches long, and they don't get beat up in the wind. What happens, and the reason they call it seven sunflower, I don't know why they call it seven sunflower exactly. They should call it two sunflower, because it goes from the white phase of the flower, and then the sepals, oops, I'm going the wrong way. The sepals turn a reddish pink. Some images I've seen, and I've seen one that was actually a little redder than this. This perhaps is maybe at the beginning before the temperature perhaps changes it to a darker shade, like a redder tone. But it's absolutely beautiful. And they actually have little fruits on them that the birds eat eventually. So it's a really nice tree. It'd be a great little specimen tree to put in your landscape. Full sun. Here we go with the manzanitas. I'm sure this is one of the plants that probably most people maybe relate to Plant Select, even people that don't even know they're buying one, because they introduced a series of, there originally were 3, now there's 4 different manzanitas. Previously, what we've only had here in Central Oregon is Arctostaphylos uva ursii, the kinnikinick, or we've had the Arctostaphylos patula, the roundleaf Arctostaphylos, which usually people purchase as they're harvested in the wild, under permit, and then sold at the nurseries as a bare root, not a bare root, I'm sorry, as a ball and burlap shrub. And they have a difficulty, I think, adapting when they're sold that way. So these are a little bit more stable. They're grown in pots. They're actually grown. There's a grower in Oregon in the valley that this is all they grow on about 10, 15 acres. So the variety that you're seeing here is the Arctostaphylos coloradensis cross. They call it a mock bearberry. And the other hybrids that they have, there's one called Panchito. That's actually the largest. And Panchito has the largest leaves. They kind of upturn, and they can get about 4 feet tall by probably about 6 feet if they're happy. And then the next one, it would be Panchito. And Panchito is about 2 feet tall, 18 to 2 feet tall in height. And then width, they get up to 3.5 to 4 feet. And there is another one that's not, I don't have any images of it, and I didn't put it in the notes, but I will, and it's actually in the notes that are correct. And it's Arctostaphylos nevadensis. And that is actually one of the parents of Panchito and Chieftain. So great plants, full sun. Just a note pretty much, and I actually put it in the notes, that I think it's really important that the most important thing that you should have if you want to grow any of these plants we're discussing successfully is having good drainage. Most newer houses are on lots that are very level. There's sometimes issues with settling and water accumulating either through, just off a roof or through irrigation runoff. These plants really do best when the water just flows through and goes somewhere else. They don't want to sit in water. If people have problems growing them, it's like about 8 times out of 10. That's one of the reasons that they fail or they fail to thrive, is because they have too much water, too much heavy soil around them, and they're getting too much water. That's another thing. A lot of these plants, they don't need irrigation after establishment. They're perfectly fine just getting the ambient, moisture out of the sky and through snow, etc. Of course, if you have an event like a heat dome, it's probably wise to supplement them with water at any plant that's in your environment. Anyway, moving on, here's some images of the flowers. The flowers actually I've seen them develop and actually open up as early as mid-February here. This year's a little weird. All of our nursery stock of these, this genus is not in flower yet, which is kind of strange because we're in April. So we're also having the forsythia bloom their little hearts out, and the viburnums that we have some early flowering viburnums. They're still in the bud stage. So things are a little wonky this year. This, if you've ever grown any of like the the evening, like the white or the pale evening primrose, some of the native ones that we have. This one is a great contender for like a pretty long-lived, it's actually perennial. It's not a biennial like some of the other ones are. It's a perennial evening primrose, and they have kind of a silver side to the underside of the leaves. So it's called, this guy is like a silver, they call it silver blades. It is probably, this is probably a couple of plants. They will spread. They're really easy to take care of. You can see some of the silvery, the leaves, and then the stems are kind of a neat maroon color on the newer growth. It's really pretty. And so I kind of pointed out a bud there, and I didn't have an image that I could take of the seed pod is just starting to develop, but they make these really large winged seed pods, and when they're ripe, they kind of crack open and they disperse the seeds. They're actually quite large. They're really cool. I think it's a great plant, and I wish they would use this more. It's a really good plant for like a health strip, or like when you go to shopping centers and you see, those poor pathetic little, like spireas all meatballed in a row or something. Those would be a really nice choice to put in there. Okay, onto a terrestrial, not a climbing clematis. Um, these are really cool. There's a lot of clematis integrifolia cultivars out there. There's a couple that have been crossed with a climbing clematis, so it's a little confusing, but some are terrestrial, some are climbers. In this case, Mongolian bells has been selected because it has this variety of color. You can see some are like a lavender, some are white, some are actually more on the pinky side, and some are on the dark purple side. Here's kind of a bluey purple one. And this was actually taken in our nursery. This was actually growing in a 1-gallon pot, and I think I took it because it was the first one that bloomed for us. We get them as small, they're like a 2x2 by 3-inch plant liner, and we shift them up in the January, February is usually when we get them. So we were all thrilled that this was our first bloom, so kind of took a picture of it. But they will get along very well with other plants. It will kind of climb through, but it's not aggressive. It won't smother anything. If you're lucky enough, sometimes they will reseed for you, which is really cool. I think it's really fun to get them and find them and kind of move them around the garden or give them as gifts to other people that admire them. This plant, this clematis is actually growing in a patch of a really cool osteospermum that we actually grow as well, the avalanche osteospermum. Like, call it an African sun daisy is kind of the common name. These are very different. These are perennial osteospermums, whereas right now we're getting in the nurseries, we're getting the annual, like the really colorful, multicolored flowered versions of a cultivated osteospermum. Whereas these, and we have another one that's called the purple mountain sun daisy. We have both of them. So here we go. And what's super cool about these, if any of you are familiar with this plant, when the bloom first opens, this little center part, and I tried to, I was taking a million pictures trying to capture this, but that center part there that kind of looks kind of grayish blue is actually, it's like this metallic color. It's the craziest thing, and they actually shimmer when you move the flowers around. I don't know what purpose that is. It must be some sort of either something to protect the plant or something to attract pollinators. I don't know what it is, but it's really cool. And they're gorgeous. And they do very well here in Central Oregon. I've had people ask for these this year already, and so we're growing a nice crop of them. And I think I didn't bring one along. I had a few samples I brought, but these guys rooted, seriously, they rooted from a 2x2 plug. They rooted in about 11 days. And then about 8 days later, they were all the way to the bottom of the pot. So we can release them now. It's like super fast. And we grow in an unheated greenhouse, just FYI. This was taken at the Colorado State University. They have a great plant trial program. They have an annual program, and then they have a perennial program. They have a 3-year perennial program. And then, of course, the annual trial is every year. It's really fun. I participated. They have a professional day where people from all over the country come, or this area of the country, that want to see annual plants grown at about a 4,200-foot elevation. Outside, everyone in full sun, same conditions, same water, same fertilizer practices. And there's probably 1,500 different plants, and like they have these blocks and beds of everything from zinnias to osteospermum to marigolds to dahlias. I mean, it's insane. They have a huge shade house area that has got all the begonias and all of the fuchsias, and it's just nuts. And then they have an area where they just have probably 100 to 150 big, large, probably like 20-inch wide diameter pots with all these annuals grown in combination and singly. So all of the growers from around the country, Syngenta, Ball, all of the major growers, they submit all these plants for trial, and you probably know about that. They do it all over the country to different universities, like back in Georgia and up in Minnesota and da 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 da. But this is really cool for us because it shows plants, that will grow in very similar conditions to what we have in Central Oregon. So it's a really fun thing. They have it in early August. If you ever want to go to it, you can. They have one for the public. They have one for people in the trade. And you can go to, I believe it's CSU Flower Trials. You can just Google that, and they have a whole website. And what's really fun is if you're interested in, say, planting a bunch of baskets or something or whatever for your garden, a certain annual, you can go look up, you can see if it was in that plant trial, how it trialed. I do that just as somebody who orders plants for our nursery. I want to make sure that what I'm ordering isn't just some, shot in the dark. It's like a tried and proven plant. So I know as master gardeners, you're familiar, you probably have a plant trial in Redmond. I think with the vegetables or something like that. So similar thing, but this is like annuals and it's on a huge scale. If you like plants, if you like flowers, it's sort of like you'll go insane. So that to our subject, hardy plants. So many people are familiar with this grass, this Butaloa. It's the blonde ambition, this blue grama grass. It's been around for a while. It's probably one of the most popular plants that Plant Select has ever introduced. There are a couple other cultivars that are coming out that aren't so big. At first, they bred this because they wanted something larger than the regular species blue grama grass, which is only about 14 inches tall. This one can get a little over 2 to 2.5 feet tall. They're a great plant. They can't say enough good things about them. They're great in combination with other plants. This image is from Chatfield Farm, part of the Denver Botanical Gardens. They had this large area near the parking lot that was just the most gorgeous combination of these Tennessee coneflowers and the Butaloa. So a lot of people refer to this. This is the Tennesseeensis on its own, so you can see it. And we do grow this plant, and it is a Plant Select introduction that's a native. So no cultivar, no hybrid. It is what it is. And I love them because they're so sturdy. And I love the way that the petals are just separate. They're not globs. We don't bring in double coneflowers. They never work. They don't survive here. If anyone has one that survives, contact me because I'll be interested in knowing more about it. Here's the Butaloa up close, this little, the seed head with the flowers right there. So some people call them, like think that they're like little bugs. I think they're like resting grasshoppers on the end of a stem. And a lot of people call them eyebrows, like an eyebrow grass. So up to you. This is early, late fall, and then going into winter. There you go. It's kind of a neat picture up against a stucco wall. So I think they're beautiful. This other grass that we're talking about now, the Muhlenbergia, I can't pronounce this, Revachernii. It's the undaunted ruby red muley grass. So this is a selection that Lauren Springer found in her garden. They brought it to trial. It passed with flying colors, and it's a really nice grass. Some people have problems with this grass. Sometimes it can get overwatered a little bit, and it kind of stalls and doesn't produce the beautiful seed heads like you see here. But it's really nice, and it's a great thing because it really shows off late August, September to the probably beginning of October. It's really, really pretty. And this is the inflorescence kind of just hanging on the ends of the stems with some light coming through it in late fall, early winter. Nice grass. Onto Delospermas, the hardy ice plant. This is another plant that was introduced by Plant Select primarily through, I'm not going to pronounce Panayotti's last name because I just can't, but many of you do know that Panayotti used to be the director. Now he's still at the Denver Botanical Garden, but he's kind of in a different, more, I think he floats around a little bit more, you know, it's kind of backed off a little bit of the day-to-day. And he's just a really nice guy if you've ever met him, or if you've ever been lucky enough to listen to one of his webinars or videos. He's so knowledgeable, and he really kind of got this genus going. He introduced, I think I can't remember which was the first one. I won't even hang myself up on that. But there's several cultivars that they have in the program. One of them is Allen's apricot. It's super popular. This is orange granita right here with the cooperi. That's kind of a close-up. It's kind of a washed out picture though. It's actually a little deeper purple than that. This is Allen's apricot. This is probably one of our best sellers of all the Delospermas. And believe me, there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of new introductions. There's some really nice white ones that have come out. But anyway, these are kind of the mainstays. There's the one called Fire Spinner that's really, really popular. This is a close-up of Allen's apricot. And then this one, I actually took this image again in Colorado a couple years ago in full sun. I mean, it was so hot that day. We were walking around with umbrellas. Before we left to go to Colorado, we knew to bring some shade with us because we're at a higher elevation than Central Oregon. And it was like in August, and it was freaking hot. And these things are just so beautiful. And I asked about how much irrigation they get, and they said they get it maybe once a week. Some of it's actually kind of broken off and grown in other areas on pathways where there's no irrigation. So really cool plants. And this is Red Mountain Flame, and it really is a true red. This plant, this honeysuckle, is probably right now one of the hottest plants that's people have wanted this plant for a long time. It's been really hard to get a hold of. We finally have some plants in our nursery now. We've always been referring people to places you can get it online, but now we have a grower who's growing it. We can get it. It does not grow from seed. It's cutting only, and it's called Kinsley's Ghost, Lonicera Kinsley's Ghost. It has an interesting history. It was propagated. It's a cross between a couple different Loniceras. A guy by the last name Kinsley, I believe, in Idaho. He was a professor in horticulture, and he developed it and grew it at his house. And when he passed away, it sort of faded away with him. But I guess some people got a hold of cuttings and started propagating it. It started popping up. And then people really became aware of it probably about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. And now Proven Winners has got a hold of it. And you can go online and get one on Proven Winners, including shipping for a little quart, and you're going to pay probably just over $40. So just know it is available without the Proven Winners label still. I probably will get a lawsuit threatening me because I'm telling people this information, but it is a plant select introduction. They found it, they got it stable in cultivation and released it, and we have it. It's very cool. A lot of people think it looks like eucalyptus. If you ever seen a silver dollar eucalyptus, this is the flower, which is sterile. And these are the reticulated leaves that wrap around the stem. That's where the flower was in the center, and kind of makes a false seed head. And this is the color in the fall. It's actually really cool. And it's this, normally it has this sort of dusty look to it. It's not fungus. It's just the way it is. But it's a very vigorous honeysuckle. If you're using it, you have to give it some space. I saw it at the Denver Botanical Garden, and it was on a, they had this big metal archway. This trellis was huge. It was probably 8 feet tall, and it went over the top of that thing. So very beautiful, very sturdy, really distinguished plant. You can really see it in the landscape. So here's just some quickies, some plants that have been around for a while or that people don't know as much about. This is turquoise tail sedum. It's pretty well known. It's a great sedum. It's not a little tiny ground cover one. It stands up about 6 to maybe 8 inches above the soil surface. And then it's been interplanted with this Veronica, a creeping Veronica called snowmass. And we have probably 3 or 4 different creeping Veronicas. We have a pure white one, we have snowmass, we have the one that Tanyoti introduced. They call it, the common name is Turkish Veronica. And that one is, I actually brought a sample of it. It's Veronica luinensis. I don't know if people can see. There it is. This is what the plant looks like. And this got planted about 2 weeks ago from a little plug. It's already grown to twice its size. It's not fully rooted, but we do have many. And great plant, beautiful, beautiful blue. And it just covers the ground. And we have a bunch of it at the nursery that's been planted for over 6 years. And it's in about a 3 by 4 spot. It turns brown on the surface. You just take a gloved hand and go over it with your hand, and you brush away all the brown stuff, and poof, it's shiny green leaves. And then it will bloom for about 3 weeks. It's incredible blue. If you're clever enough, you can get on your hands and knees and trim it back with scissors, and it will do a second bloom. So deadheading, it's able to be deadheaded. Whoops. This is Penstemon mexicali, Windwalker's garnet. So there's quite a few of the mexicali hybrids out there. I think they're, I guess they call them like kind of a promiscuous plant. They like to interbreed. So there's a lot of varieties out there that you can get a hold of. The ones that we've had in the nursery have been the red and pink ones. This one's a little bit more of a purple, although they call it garnet. But they're really easy to deadhead. You just snap them off when they start looking kind of funky. The stems, the flowers are all spent, and just snip it, and they'll pop up with a new one, in a few days or whatever. It's a great plant, and they're not huge. They get maybe about 16 inches to 2 feet tall. They will reseed, so that's, I don't think it's a negative thing. I enjoy them. The bees adore them. Great plant. And anyway, lots of different colors available. This is a great ground cover. Again, just kind of speaking from my landscape background of really good plants to use in commercial spaces, this would be a really top choice for me in a full sun area. It's a Roost lobata. The 3-leaf sumac, and it's kind of got shiny green leaves through the spring and summer. And then in the fall, it turns a brilliant red, just like if you're familiar with the same sumac, it's low grow sumac. Low grow actually is not as low as this. This is a true ground covering one. It only gets about 8 to 10 inches tall, and it spreads up to 6 to 8 feet. So if you have some real estate to cover, this is your plant. If you're not familiar with partridge feather, which has been around for a while, this is a really, really nice ground cover as well. Probably gets, I'd say on average, 12 to 14 inches. In a really dry situation, it'll of course be shorter. Really tough plant. I did bring a little sample. This was in the same group of little plugs that we planted in early February. Oops, I have to remember I'm going this way. This plant, this was the fastest rooting plant we've ever had. So with that in mind, I think it would take establishment in a landscape really easily with really good drainage. It would do great. Really pretty. You can deadhead these. Sometimes it reblooms, often it really doesn't, but it has this just impeccably beautiful silvery white color, which is a nice foil if you're planting other things around it. Some of those Mexicali penstemon would look lovely against that. Maybe some, shorter delphiniums, like the Diamond Series delphiniums that are kind of rounded would look really pretty with this. And Zelosperma kind of going around the front of it would be beautiful. Really nice plant. So salvias. So I know everyone loves like the the salvia, like the blue suede shoes and the black and blue. The species of that is, I can't pronounce it very well. It begins with a G, ends with an A. Gargantia. I can't pronounce it. I'm really bad with Latin. It has to be right in front of my face to do it. These are very similar. These are Salvia gregii, like hybrids and crosses, and they will die completely to the ground. So never fear. If it has good drainage and it was like a robust plant in bloom the previous season, don't worry, it should come back. A lot of people dig these up. They dig their salvias up thinking that they're dead. It happens a lot. And I've even had staff like find them, in a pot and it just looks dead. And my little thing that I do is I tug on it. I give a good tug on the stem. We only cut these back to about 8 to 10 inches for the winter in the landscape or in a pot if we're overwintering our pots, which we do with all of our stock. It goes mostly outside except for a couple of things we have to keep in the greenhouse because we have these bad rabbits that come around and want to eat them in the winter. So, but no, the tug test is to me what really works. If it's rotted and it's dead, it will just slip right out. So this is what I do with these guys. Never fear, it'll probably start leafing out probably at the end of May. It's a little late, but hey, you get this all through the summer and into the fall, and they're beautiful, beautiful plants and really easy to take care of, easy to deadhead. And as you can see, these the sphinx moth or the hummingbird moth or whatever it is, which is tomato hornworm, I think. They really, really like these plants. We have white cultivars now that are really cool. That's kind of a newer series. We have a heat wave series that we got in last year and we're trialing it. And so far they're looking good. Nothing's slipping the pot. So check these out. And a few people have actually grown redbirds in a tree and they're thriving for them. It's a kind of a slow plant to get established, but once it's established, it's pretty happy. They can get up to 4 feet. I have a client in Redmond who has kind of a slope that's kind of a meadowy area, and she has about 3 or 4 of these in there, and they're doing really well. with grasses around them and echinacea. It's really, really pretty. They're hard to find this year, or lately. I haven't been able to find any, and we don't have the time or patience to grow these from seed. So if you see one, grab one. They're really good, and they're great pollinator plants. And they do look like little red birds. You can see the little head and kind of, where it connects to the calyx there. Kind of looks like a little red bird. This is a couple of plants that are really beloved. The Salvia pachyphylla or Mojave sage is one that we've been bringing in for probably the last 3 years. Had a friend tell me about it, and so I got one and played around with it and really, really like it. And I saw it in a garden in the gardens at Spring Creek in near Fort Collins. It's actually a public garden for them, maintained by the city. And there's a garden in that space called the Undaunted Garden that Lauren Springer designed, and she actually maintains it. So I saw these growing there up against these big slabs of sandstone, which are all over that area. And it is absolutely stunning. Very, very low water. Water is sort of its curse, because when they get overwatered, they just shut down and die, turn yellow, and they go bye-bye. Really great plant though, and it is really tough. Even though it says Mojave sage, I think it's reliably hardy to -20. So works for us great, should work for you, because I don't think anybody in Bend's been below -15 in quite a few years. I could be, so just FYI, great plant. Great pollinator plant as well. And next to it is what used to be referred to as Zauschneria, now is Epilobium. I still can't get over the change of nomenclature, but it is what it is. So Epilobium garrettii, the most common version you can get is called Orange Carpet. The other one is Wayne Select. We're growing and trialing a pink one that we got up at Heronswood in Washington last summer. And so if that works out, we'll be selling those too. It'd be nice to have a pink one out there. Great plants. Can't say enough good things about the Epilobium. As you can tell, being a long red tube, it's an instant hummingbird magnet. Therefore, a lot of people refer to it as a common name, hummingbird fuchsia, which it's not a fuchsia. So I always have to explain to people, no, you're not getting a fuchsia. It really isn't a fuchsia. So they can get quite wide. They can get up to 4 feet wide. We cut ours back in February, and right now it's got new growth emerging, which is a neat kind of maroon red color, and very cool plant. They are brittle, so if you plant them next to a walkway, make sure you set it back at least 2 feet, so when it emerges, you won't have to keep on stepping on it and breaking it or having dogs walk on it or whatever. So great plant. Actually could be considered a ground cover, more so I think than like a like a mounding type perennial. So penstemons, and this is the penstemon pinifolius, the pine leaf penstemon. This little guy got introduced, I think, 4 years, maybe 5 years ago. And so this is a dwarf form of a regular pine leaf penstemon called half pint, which is amazing because these plants are, as many of you probably know, they're actually evergreen. So they will last for, just for forever. I mean, and you trim them back in the spring and poof, they start up again. So this one is small enough you could actually plant it in a border, like right near the edge of something, and it wouldn't look out of place. It gets probably about 12 to 16 inches wide, depending on how happy it is. Again, a great little hummingbird plant. They love them. And then here's a new variety that's just been out a couple of years. The stepsons. Actually, it's been probably 3 years, 4 years at the most. This guy's like a normal size. You can see in the landscape picture on your right, you can see it kind of wedged between, it looks like a penstemon and behind a tall sedum that's in bloom. Really, really beautiful plant. And it kind of shimmers in the light. That's what I like about this one. And then the other variety of Penstemon pinifolius in the trade is the yellow one. And that one is about, I didn't have a time for a picture, but it's a great one too. And it's called, the variety is Mercy Yellow, MERSEA, Mercy, like I think like in Liverpool or something like that. So here is some images at the very end here. This is a friend of mine that accompanied me to the DBG, the Denver Botanical Garden. And we spent 5 days there in in the Denver area, cruising around and just going to gardens. And I'm really glad, if you ever plan to go to the Denver Botanical Garden, you can buy a membership, because if you buy your membership, you pay for it. If you go for 2 days, you've paid for it, and it's great. And then you get all their notices throughout the year, and a lot of really fun things, are shared through their website and everything. And great botanical garden. You can fly directly from Redmond to Denver, folks. It's pretty fun, pretty easy. You don't have to go to Portland. And she flew from Denver, from Portland. I flew from Redmond, and we landed within 5 minutes of each other. Super, super great time. This is the gardens at Spring Creek, and this is the demonstration garden for Plant Select. This is one part of it, one end of it. And you can see everything kind of growing nicely together. These plants are really designed kind of with the more naturalistic plant landscape thinking of bringing plants together. It provides, harbors moisture with the cover of the plant, so you don't have all this bare soil exposed for weeds to germinate in. And these plants, they're brought along correctly, they'll just outcompete most of the weeds around here. You come visit our nursery. We have a demonstration garden that fronts our nursery. It's about 400 linear feet of plantings. And we do battle with a lot of weeds that come in from an industrial area. We're on the east side of the highway, so the wind blows from west to east. So we end up with just everything trying to grow. But over the years, it's getting a little better because the plants are starting to outcompete some of the weeds that are trying to anchor there. This is the beginnings. So this is some of that sandstone I was referring to that's really endemic to this area of Colorado. It's so beautiful. I wished I could have taken some home, but I don't think I could have afforded the overweight luggage cost. But this is the beginnings of the Undaunted Garden, which is kind of on a little rise there. And this is that same garden 3 years later. And absolutely fabulous. There is a lot of cacti, a lot of hardy yuccas. This is where I saw the Salvia pachyphylla growing up near the top. And if you're lucky, you might even run into Lauren Springer like I did. I thought she was just an employee working there, and I had a question about one of the plants. And I walked up to her and I almost fainted because she had a little name tag on and it said Lauren Springer. And I was like, oh my God. So she's one of my favorite garden designers, and I've got a couple of her books, and I've attended one of her seminars. So I was like almost about ready to have a little fangirl moment that I got it together. And we had a nice conversation for about an hour. She knew that I lived in Nevada and lived in Central Oregon currently. And so she had a lot of questions for me about plants. It was really fun. So that's about it. Thanks for watching. And if you want to reach out to us, there's the information there. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have a website, blah, blah, blah. And we're always happy to talk plants to people. So thank you so much for your time. And thanks for for Comga getting this together, all the master gardener volunteers getting this together. They've been great. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for a really inspiring presentation. I know
I'm
that
looking at my clock. It's 11 o'clock.
you covered a lot of ground, and I have so many ideas in my head for things that I want to plant in my garden this year. So super
I'm
inspiring.
dying because it's 11. It's like right on the dot, and I wasn't even trying.
You did great. Well, we
Thank
have
you.
a bunch of questions that came in, so I'm just going to go down our list if you don't mind.
Sure.
Eileen has a question. How much sun can the hot wing tartarian maple handle?
Okay, so the first slide I think I had of that, I think was our very, no, it was our first slide on the program. So this is a little story. In the city of Madras, they installed a brand new city complex, you know, where the city hall, that's what we call those things. So they built a new city hall, and I think it was 2018, 2017. And the architect or landscape architect specified a Japanese maple for that site, which they went ahead and planted. Unbeknownst to me, I'm so busy at work, I didn't know this was happening. I would have said something immediately had I known, but it was planted on the south side of the building, and it's a big brick building surrounded by concrete entryways with just an ocean of asphalt. So you can imagine the heat generated for that poor little Japanese maple, which probably, you know, was shipped over from the valley, landed in this hole in the ground in front of this like heat monster. It was totally denuded of leaf. The leaves just like basically crispified, and then they just shattered and fell to the ground. The guys in the public works department called me. They were in a panic. They go, "We're having our ribbon cutting ceremony in 2 days. We need to replace this." I go, hmm. So it was a Japanese, I didn't laugh in their face, but I'm like dying, right? And I go, "Hey, we have this hot wings maple." And it was perfect. It was a 15-gallon plant, single trunk, popped it in there. It's been fine ever since, even despite some of this mismanagement with the irrigation. That kind of, you know, the typical thing where they put the irrigation emitters right like within an inch of the root flare, which and so it's persistent and it's beautiful. So it's a great plant for that, Eileen.
Oh,
Loves, it can take the heat.
fantastic. And then a few people asked about kind of wildlife concerns with some of these plants that you talked about. Are most of those pretty safe to plant if you have deer or other animals that can access?
I'd say most of them are, but this is the thing. Probably Master Gardener is aware of the work that Rutgers University has done, like compiling deer resistance for all these different genuses and species of plants in the country. So if you go to their list and you know you look up a plant and it's either A, B, A being very resistant, B semi, and da 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 da, you'll find that most of these plants fall in the B or A category. But that's not to say, like, I don't like liver. You might like liver and onions, but I hate it. So, but deer are the same way I've found, because we have deer just within Jefferson County that will go and they'll annihilate something, right? Like a euonymus, they'll just annihilate it. But this guy over here that's had euonymus in front of his dealership, they've never been touched, even though deer migrate through there because there's an agricultural area right behind them. So in general, yes. But I would, if you're kind of unsure, I would always just like either protect it with spray the first time, you know, just a topical spray. Put it somewhere, just put a single specimen out there and just see how they deal with it. But I just, you know, it's like it's really hard with deer anymore because with the droughts we've been having and the deer pressure and also rabbits. A lot of people don't mention rabbits, but I think rabbits can actually be even more destructive because deer tend to graze, but rabbits, they just keep coming back night after night after night or whatever time they choose to visit, and it's just gone. I mean, it's gone.
Okay, let's see. Kathy has a question. I live in Lapine with 5 feet of volcanic soil as topsoil. I have a really difficult time getting flowering perennials to last past 1 year. How do I amend the soil for flowers like you presented?
So first of all, I know lapine is also, you know, pine trees. So make sure you have enough sun. Um, the drainage, I mean, doesn't seem like you have a problem with drainage, having all that lava rock. You're going to have to amend it with just some regular topsoil, probably just to make the profile so it, and even some organic matter, although, you know, the idea of organic matter, when we add it to Central Oregon soils, it only lasts like 1 or 2 seasons. It kind of goes away. But I think that if you just add some regular topsoil, plants will be pretty happy. We actually have to, we don't buy in soil for transplanting our plants in pots. A lot of these plants that we do for Plant Select, we actually make our soil using as a starter just the average potting soil that you can buy in a commercial setting. You know, it's the typical stuff, but we actually add native topsoil to it, about to like 1/3 to 1/2, depending on what we're planting. And we also augment it probably with some extra pumice. So, because drainage is really important. I don't know what kind of perennials you were trying to introduce in Lapine, but most of the Plant Select plants, especially the ones that have a tendency to be either all native or a nativar, you know, a cultivar of a native, they will require less fussy soil. So hopefully that will help you.
That's nice to hear. I
Yeah.
hope that works out for you. So Rocky had a question. She was wanting to clarify if the muhly grass produces seed heads.
So I have not encountered it in our nursery situation. We have some planted in our berm area. I haven't. The only grass that we've had reproducing is northern sea oats grass, panic grass, and of course fescue, you know. But those are the ones. I haven't had the muley grass reproduce. So
Okay,
yeah.
great. And Bonnie has a question. She said, you mentioned sedum. Are there any other succulents for in ground or in pots that would do well here? If in
Lots.
pot, okay, and if in pots, what to do with them in the winter?
So the hardy sedums, we actually have some in pots. We do hypertufa classes at work and at the nursery. And we actually have like some Delosperma and also some sedums, little sedums. You know, they're the hardy sedums that are hardy to zone 5, not like there's a really conflicting thing going on because a lot of the nurseries and stores, like the box stores, sell a lot of sedums that are like they're temperate sedums. They're not hardy for us. And so people get confused and they get dismayed because they kind of mix them in, but then these things poop out. And so just make sure that when you read the label, it says hardy to zone 5, zone 6, and you should be good. Give them good drainage. If you want them to look really good, if you can bring them in an unheated greenhouse or push them up against a building, like the south side of your building, where they can get some radiant heat, they'll be fine. Should be fine.
Okay. Another person asked, are all these plants available at your nursery? And if so, when would they be available?
So not everything's available all the time at one time. Everything kind of comes and goes, but everything that I have mentioned here, yes, they're either in the greenhouse or outside in our growing area growing, or we order them in. They're coming in because we don't have enough room to grow everything. So yeah.
Okay, but they can find them at your store and
Mhm.
coming in either
And
now or
the best thing to do actually is when we're really busy, phone calls are great. We love to talk to people. We really, really do. But when it's something about plants and we need to go through everything, it's easier if you send us like a wish list. A lot of people go on the website and they pull down plants and they'll shoot us an email. Emails are great because then I don't have to rely on myself or an employee writing down, and then, you know, we might lose the little slip of paper, even though we have a phone book thing. You know what I mean? So emails really are good. And then once we get you dialed in on what you want, we actually have a spreadsheet. We can put you in there and notify you when it comes in.
perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, someone else asked, I live at a higher elevation from Madras. Will these plants do well at 3,700 feet?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
We have a lot of folks east of us in the Ochocos who actually bought quite a few plants, and they do great. And a lot of people in Bend too.
excellent. Same person asked, do I need to do anything special to get the plants established? And what about bloom time if I want to have things blooming from spring through fall?
Well, a lot of the plants, such as like the penstemons, we were talking about those Mexicali penstemons, a lot of the salvias, if you are good about deadheading, like really on it, they will keep blooming. You're going to have to probably fertilize them a little bit instead of just leaving them to their own devices. Establishing, I'd say 3/4 of these plants, once they're established after about 3 years, you don't really need to like water them. I mean, you could pretty much almost abandon them and, you know, they do okay, especially the woodier they are. The smaller, that gets, you know, a little dicey sometimes, unless it's like some of the Delosperma will kind of, they'll find their little spots they like to hang out on.
Okay, but for actually getting them established, just build up your soil,
Mhm.
adequate watering, right plant in the right place, kind
And
of
by
basic.
build it up, like we were talking earlier, like make a gentle berm. Too many spaces in newer housing is the developers leave them flat as a pancake with a 2% grade, because that's legally what they have to do for the code, or you know, they have to slope from the house to the street or whatever. But I'm here to tell you, invest in some topsoil and have your contractor, have your landscaper do extra topsoil. That's a really good investment with some rocks and get it graded. Some people are really good at it. So find out some gardens that you really like and talk to the homeowners and find out if they did it or if somebody, you know, landscaper did it. But, you know, there's just ask. A lot of people are really happy to share information, especially when you're happy, they're happy. You know, they take pride in their landscape.
I found that to be true as well.
Yeah.
Julia is asking, what are some dry/shade plants? Can you suggest anything in particular?
Um, from the things we've discussed today, going over my list, we really didn't get into shady things, but one plant I like for dry shade is it's a Symphocarpus. It's a Hancock coral berry. It's not part of the Plant Select program, but it can grow in full sun and it can grow in dry shade, and it can also very successfully grow under pines and spruces, like evergreens that are, you know, fairly dense canopies. They can grow under it very easily, and one plant can cover probably easily like a 8x8 area, and they get about 2.5 to, if you let them go totally wild, they'll get about 3 feet tall. But it's related to a Symphocarpus, is our snowberry plant here in the Cascades. So very similar leaf, but you know, snowberries are kind of, you know, they'll get 4 or 5 feet and they look kind of weird, you know. These are actually almost a ground covering shrub, and they have beautiful little waxy dark pink berries. They get a ton of bees on them. The bees just go crazy, and I mean you can hear the whole plant humming, even though you can't see the bees. You can, you know, that's one of those plants where it's just like, zzz. And they grow very well in dry shade. They like dry shade. That's just off the top of my head, but there are a ton of other plants. I just like, my brain is kind of
Okay, and that's easily done with a Google
yeah.
search.
And I'd be, if they want to ever come up or call or visit, I can kind of lead them by the hand and show them what works.
Okay. Casey is asking, how do you create more drainage? I don't know if that's too big of a topic to get into on
It's kind of a big, kind of technical. Ideally, it happens before you even break ground to build your, if you're building a new home, it's really important. I tell this to everybody, like when I used to do landscaping construction, I was like, can you please, like, if this ever happens, contact a landscaper, you know, because they're an integral part of your home. If you're, you know, you want to get it together and you want to save money, because you can do a lot of stuff at the front end that's really hard after the, you know, the hardscape is in and after the fence is in, and you know, you're addressing drainage issues after the fact. It's way better to get a landscaper out there along with your contractor and you guys can work it all out. If that's not the scenario and it's post-construction, then you just have to work with like a really reputable landscaper. And I mean reputable because there's landscapers out there that don't have a clue about drainage. I'll be the first to tell you. And a lot of landscape architects will tell you that as well. They kind of give it short shrift. It's really important. So we're blessed in that most of the soil here in Central Oregon is not too clay and heavy. So, but what I was telling you about earlier, about if you can afford to bring in just some screen topsoil, even on screen topsoil. We created our berm at work. We had piles and piles and piles of just junk soil, and we just dumped it all into this berm because we had to get rid of it. And I'm like, hey, berm, planting, yay, elevation, right? Because people can see it, they can see it, it shows the plants off. Plus, guess what? The plants are happier. Yeah.
Okay, someone else asked, the plants that you addressed, are they poisonous for pets? Do you know?
Are they who?
Are they poisonous for pets?
There is. You know, you're going to have to look that up. If you have an interest in a plant, you just got to do your due diligence and make sure that you're looking at websites that are like, you know, reputable, that have like an edu in the, you know, in the address, because so much information there is like the whole, you've heard of that poinsettias are going to kill your cat and all that. Not true. Might make them a little sick, but you know, if your cat's silly enough to eat, but do your due diligence. I don't see anything here that is quote unquote anything I've talked about yet today, but I know that they're out there. There is a plant and it's not coming to mind, and I was like, wow, all parts are toxic. And it's like, it's not a plant select plant, but it's like a really popular one. And I'm sorry that I can't remember it. If you were in my brain right now, you'd be like right near the red line, guys.
Well, I think for Pat, it's probably important to check the tags and ask questions.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, but don't depend on kind of, you know, the woo-woo, you know, the first thing you come upon that's been pushed and marketed on the internet. Look at some, you know, good information from like a veterinarian site, or, you know, like a Rutgers University type site.
A lot of the education sites are
Exactly, yeah.
tried and true and research based.
Exactly, yeah.
Definitely trustworthy. Okay, Eileen is asking you to share your experience with Daphne's.
Like, they are a tough customer. They need really good drainage, and they need pretty decent soil. So the Daphnes that we grow in Central Oregon, or, you know, I actually don't grow any Daphnes because that is one toxic plant. I know that. So Daphne sonorum, which is rock Daphne, and then there's these hybrids of Daphne transatlantica. So they're all plants that are native to the Balkan region up in the highlands. They need a certain amount of acidity that sometimes we can't provide. They need good drainage, and full sun. When I was in the garden club in Madras, we did a public works project in our park, our city park, and we were cleaning up the rose area. Well, I unearthed a Daphne transatlantica that must have been 30, 40 years old. It had a trunk on it that big, and it was only about 18 inches above the ground, but it had been covered by all this weird vegetation and weeds and everything. And we opened it up and cleared it out, and it was absolutely gorgeous. We were like, wow, like we just found like a diamond, right? A year later, they tore it out because the communication never filtered through to the city. Hey, look what you've got, you know? And I was like, oh God, it's gonna die. Anyway, they do grow here. They can be happy. So, but it's a little bit of a gamble. That's all I'll say. I'd say that there's probably 40% mortality on those things. All the stars need to be lined up right. if you had a rock garden situation and you were able to amend the soil in a rock garden just right for that, I think it would work really well. I've seen them growing Daphne sonorum in Redmond. I think it's on 7th or 8th Street is where I used to go to my doctor, and it used to have a Daphne sonorum about 4 foot in diameter growing right in the health strip of the sidewalk, right next to the street. So, you know, in winter, it got all sorts of junk on top of it.
And it survived.
It survived. Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
and thrived maybe. Yeah.
I know, but they are really kind of weird plants to get established. They are. I agree.
Okay, and then kind of a specific question. Cinda is asking if there's any cyclamen that grow in this area. Do you happen to know that?
The species cyclamen will, that would be a good dry shade plant. Cyclamen heterofolium, just make sure you just grow species. You know, look at the tag. There's some nurseries that do grow them, that sell them. There's a nursery in the valley that is mail order only. We sometimes buy wholesale from them because they're right on our little, the area that I visit now around my regular nursery route. Um, it is called Edelweiss Nursery, and they have quite a few hardy cyclamen for sale. If you go to the Portland area and you're going to visit nurseries, if you've ever heard of Sistus Nursery, it's on Salvie Island. Makes a great day trip just to go out there and visit Salvie in the summer, you know, months. It's beautiful. Lots of really cool places to visit. But I know that they have some hardy cyclamen as well. And Portland Nursery also does. So there you
Okay,
go.
great. Cinda, lots of great options for finding those plants.
Mhm.
Kim is asking, what plants would you recommend to grow next to a small stone pond about 3 foot by 3 foot?
Is this in partial shade?
She
I
didn't,
don't know.
didn't say.
So most ponds that I've had that are successful get probably half day sun. They get some relief from the afternoon sun. You can grow really nice plants that way. You don't grow as much algae that way. Of course, filter helps, fish helps. But like I would say, oh, what is it? We were talking about early. One of the Veronicas are great for that. Delospermas are good for that around the edging. Um, Probably in the little sunnier spot. If you want to keep it in scale, since it's like a 3 by 3 pond, you want to think plants that are maybe their profiles are a little smaller when they're fully developed. Like the half pint penstemon would be good for that. Um, Yes. We have some grasses that are smaller. It's not part of the Plant Select program, but there's a variegated grass that we have. It's escaping my brain right now, but it's very soft and it loves like a little bit of afternoon shade. It does very well, and it doesn't get over 18 inches tall. It's a great plant. And then I'd probably, if you do need shade, consider planting like a really nice dwarf conifer, or maybe a grouping of some dwarf conifers. Get some, you know, like creeping juniper. There's a really nice plant. It's a Juniperus conferta. It's a Japanese shore juniper that looks like a trailing spruce. That's really lovely in a small situation. You can put if you have the spot for it, you can put one of the hardy Japanese maples, like a bloodgood or just a regular seedling Japanese maple nearby. It would look really pretty.
Okay, those are some great suggestions. We have time for about one more question from Sheila. She's asking what your opinion is on magnolia bushes and trees.
So there are hardy magnolias. The ones that I've grown that are hardy are the ones that are the crosses. And I just know them by name variety. I don't know them by their botanical name, but the star magnolia, that's actually Magnolia stellata. There's a couple of different star magnolias. There's one called Royal Star. They tend to get about 8 to 10 feet around here. I'm in Madras at 2,500 feet. I've seen one that was gorgeous in full sun. And it was almost 10 feet tall by about 6, 7 feet wide. It's just beautiful. So the star magnolias do really well. We sell them. There's some cultivars. There's one called, they're girl names like Anne, Susan. One's pink and one's kind of a purple color. We sell those and those work. They work very well. And then we have some trees that we've done in the past. One is called butterflies, and it's actually a yellow form. It's a really beautiful yellow form. We actually have one at the nursery now, and it's budded. It's not open yet. But our star magnolias are starting to bloom. They're going through their bloom now. So it should be probably another, 2 or 3 weeks, I would think we start seeing some definite budding on there with colors. So those work. But the large leaf, the grandifolias, those aren't going to work here. They're just not cold hardy enough. And they're too big. And even if they work cold hardy, they get so beat up in the wind and everything, it wouldn't be worth it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all that great
Oh,
information.
you're
We
welcome.
really appreciate your presentation and taking the
Thank
time to
you.
answer all those questions.
Okay.
Everyone, you'll be receiving a brief survey in the coming days, as well as a link to access this webinar if you wanted to see it again. Definitely appreciate everyone for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say one thing. Thanks you so much for guiding me through this for the last week or so. It's been great. Yep. And if there's other questions, if somebody had a question and didn't get answered, you could always send it to our Facebook page or to Instagram, and then we will, you'll get an answer.
Sounds great. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Everyone. Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.